western slope of Battle Ridge, running from Last Stand Hill down to the Little Bighorn River, roughly 50 memorial stones mark an irregular, dispersed pattern. This arrangement is called the South Skirmish Line, and it extends toward a precipitous gully referred to as Deep Ravine. Historical evidence and testimonies from both military personnel and Native American participants verify that fighting and deaths took place in this location. The problem, though, is that the South Skirmish Line appears to display too many memorial stones, whereas Deep Ravine itself presently contains not a single one. This prompts the questions: did cavalrymen die inside Deep Ravine, and are their bodies still buried there today? In the frontier military, a trooper's core allegiance belonged to his company rather than his regiment. Your company comprised the individuals you were stationed with, ate with, traveled beside, and resided among. The thinking wasn't, "I serve in the 7th Cavalry," but instead, "I belong to a particular company within the 7th Cavalry." Every company cultivated its own unique personality and standing. Of particular note, the 1876 expedition represented the first time in the 7th's existence that all 12 companies deployed together as a complete regiment. Previously, in 1868, just before the Battle of the Washita, Custer had reorganized every company's mounts according to their coat color. Although one might contend this fulfilled a tactical purpose by rendering companies distinguishable at distance, Custer mainly implemented the modification because he thought it looked spectacular. Of particular importance, the unit riding gray-colored mounts gained renown as the Gray Horse Troop. This information matters because during the Little Bighorn engagement, when Native American observers mention the gray horses, we can determine precisely which company they're describing. Company E's personnel were among the regiment's most experienced troopers. Merely about 10% possessed fewer than 12 months of military experience. They operated under 1st Lieutenant Algernon Smith and 2nd Lieutenant James Sturgis. During the morning hours of June 25th, while moving toward the Little Bighorn, Custer divided his regiment into battalions, specifically into 5 battalions. Major Reno took charge of companies A, G, and M. Captain Benteen commanded D, H, and K. Captain Miles Keogh received companies C, I, and L. Captain George Yates obtained companies E and F. Captain Thomas McDougall took responsibility for Company B, along with a non-commissioned officer and 6 troopers from each remaining company to protect the pack train. In subsequent years, Native American fighters who participated were questioned about their memories of Custer's portion of the engagement. These fighters recalled witnessing cavalrymen moving along Battle Ridge toward the spot where the present-day monument stands. Among this formation were troopers mounted on gray-colored horses. Numerous fighter testimonies describe the gray horses getting mixed up with other animals at the ridge's far end, the place now designated Last Stand Hill. A group of cavalrymen pushed farther north beyond the hill itself, threatening to cross the river upstream from the village section held by the Cheyenne. This formation, however, pulled back toward what is currently the cemetery and later reunited with the primary force on the hill. The troopers riding gray-colored mounts then moved down the incline toward the river, dismounted, and initiated a gunfight with the fighters. The Native American combatants succeeded in scattering the gray horses, dividing them from the cavalrymen, and captured numerous animals close to the water's edge. Now on foot, these troopers experienced various outcomes. Some died at their positions, others battled their way back toward Last Stand Hill, and a portion fled toward the closest shelter they could locate, Deep Ravine. Fighter testimonies mention at minimum a handful of cavalrymen, perhaps as few as 4 or 5, arriving at a deep gulch or ravine and being killed there. In total, 39 members of Company E died. This number comprised its 2 officers, 3 sergeants, 4 corporals, 2 trumpeters, and 28 privates. Only 10 of these individuals could be definitively identified. The unit's leader, Lieutenant Smith, was found dead on Last Stand Hill, away from his troops. First Sergeant Frederick Homeyer was identified among the company cluster by the name stitched into one of his socks. The body of 2nd Lieutenant Sturgis was never found, or at minimum never definitively identified. Following the battle, cavalrymen assigned to securing the site and performing burials noted seeing multiple bodies inside Deep Ravine. The exact number reported by these observers varied, though the most commonly mentioned figure was 28. These deceased men were identified as members of E Company. 3 years afterward, during the sessions of Reno's Court of Inquiry, Captain Miles Moylan, who led Company A, gave the following testimony. After leaving that spot, I rode up to that location, I think with Major Reno. In the ravine designated H on the diagram, we found over 20 bodies from E Company. They had evidently been fighting while withdrawing. I could see the track where they had gone down the edge and attempted to scale the opposite side, which was almost straight up. The impressions were visible where they had employed their hands to climb, but these marks only extended halfway up the slope. During that identical court of inquiry, Captain Thomas McDougall, leader of Company B, declared, "I went only to the spot where Custer was killed. Major Reno then ordered me to gather my company, advance to the village, and obtain implements for the burial of the dead. When I came back, he told me to bury Company E, the unit I had personally commanded for 5 years, and to note the names of the individuals where possible. I found the bulk of them in a ravine. To the best of my recollection, that is where the majority of Company E were found. Approximately half were positioned within the ravine itself, with the other half arranged along a line beyond it. Each man was lying face down, and the character of their injuries indicated most were shot from the flank. My assessment is that they mounted the strongest defense they could and were probably attacked from both sides." So here's the dilemma. There are 50 or so memorial stones positioned along the south skirmish line, with several atop Deep Ravine, yet not one is situated within the ravine itself. This offers two possibilities concerning the bodies in Deep Ravine. They are either present or they are absent. If they were once present, by what method and for what purpose were they moved? If they were never present, why did the story of their presence become widespread? One theory is that the troopers never entered Deep Ravine. The ravine referenced by witnesses may actually be the broader basin zone that includes the south skirmish line, and certainly one could characterize this wide sloping landscape as a ravine. During the 1980s, a series of excavations was performed within Deep Ravine proper, attempting to discover any trace of cavalrymen. No evidence was located. Additionally, the troopers who reburied remains in the years after the battle placed stakes wherever they found bodies. No stakes were ever positioned inside Deep Ravine. Think about the stone markers erected a few years afterward as well. If cavalrymen had died in the ravine, it is improbable they were recovered and interred elsewhere. By the time of their burial, the remains had been lying exposed for 3 days and were in no condition to be moved. The soldiers simply covered the corpses with soil. I'm no authority on geology, but the gradient of Deep Ravine's floor apparently makes it improbable that the troopers' remains were washed away by water toward the river. Consequently, the lack of markers inside Deep Ravine implies no cavalrymen ever rested there. That represents one perspective. Alternatively, you have the statements of numerous people, both cavalry and native, who describe cavalrymen perishing at a steep geographical depression. Captain McDougall swore in court that half the troops from E Company, which he extensively commanded, were discovered partially inside a ravine and partially outside it. Captain Moylan even described witnessing marks where troopers had tried to claw up the ravine walls. Only one spot on the battlefield fits that characterization: Deep Ravine. Period. Photographs show the ravine's sides have worn away somewhat since the 1870s. Perhaps the remains rest buried more deeply than originally thought. Archaeological investigations near the memorial stones along the edge of Deep Ravine have revealed countless bullets and shell casings. Considering the amount of first-hand testimony, it is hard to completely rule out the likelihood that bodies remain inside the ravine. So what is the answer? I cannot state with certainty, but I am curious about your perspective. Please leave your thoughts in a comment below on what you think happened to the Gray Horse Troop, and remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and enable notifications.